It's a male red deer synonymous with stag.
Hello, everyone. We'll try that again. Welcome.
That's a specific species.
I'm going to mute everyone first, and then if I could ask our presenters today to unmute yourself, we'll have a good recording here. Again, thank you for joining. You've joined the Opta Live webinar. My name is Karen Cameron, CEO of the Ontario Public Transit Association, and it's my pleasure to welcome our sponsor for today, Antoine Balayev and Fairtek. Thank you for sponsoring. This is the second session that Fairtek has done for the Opta Live webinar series. These learning events are not possible without the generous sponsorship. So we'd like to thank you. And with that, Antoine, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Karen. It's a pleasure to be here today, and you're doing a fantastic job with this series. We love to participate. I'm with Fairtek. We're a mobile ticketing solution from Switzerland that uses check in, check out, but that's all you'll hear about Fairtek today. You'll hear how it's used, and the reason why we wanted to gather these folks today is that we hear a lot of discussion about how to bring customers back to transit, attract and retain. We don't talk a lot about fare policy. And I happen to know through my company and the work that we do that German transit agencies are being very creative with regards to fares. So we wanted to give them shine a spotlight on what they're doing and hopefully inspire some discussions here in North America. So no more from us. I'll put my contact information in the chat. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce my colleague who's joining us from Switzerland, Sarah Collard. Sarah is a project manager at Fairtek, and she has firsthand experience implementing these projects. And she will be our moderator today. Sarah, take it away.
Thank you, Antoine, and thank you, Karen, for the opportunity. Hi, and welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm very excited to hear from our speakers today about innovative fares and the way that transit agencies are reinventing transit fares. But before leaving the floor to the speakers, I'd like to introduce them to you. So to start with, we'll hear from Hendrik Koch. Hendrik is a director and partner at Mobilité Consultants in Cologne, where he leads strategic and operational projects for mobility services, public transport operators, associations, and public authorities. He's also a visiting lecturer for urban mobility at the Technische Hochschule in Cologne. Hendrik has a doctorate from the European Business School. After Hendrik, we'll hear from Eduard Rollman. Eduard heads the Marketing Competence Center at the Rhein-Sieg Transportation Association in Cologne, with responsibility for fares, sales, revenue sharing, market research, and communications, as well as the development of distance-based fares in the state of North Rhine-Westphalia. Eduard also holds a master's degree in applied mathematics from Heinrich Heine University in Düsseldorf. And finally, we'll hear from Annalise Czerny. As the founder of Annalise Czerny Consulting, Annalise supports public sector organizations across North America by translating public policy into business strategy. In her previous role as chief of Presto at Metrolinx, she led Canada's largest public transit payments business. Annalise is an International Women's Forum Fellow and holds an MBA from the London Business School, a Master's of Physics from the University of Quebec at Trois-Rivières, and an engineering degree from the University of Guelph. So now you've heard a lot from the speakers, and you've heard enough from me. Just a couple more notes. So Hendrik and Eduard will both have presentations, and then we'll hear from Annalise's North American perspective. If you have any questions, please feel free to write them down in the chat. We'll tackle them in the Q&A session at the end. So without further ado, Hendrik, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sarah and Juan and Karen, for the nice introduction. I'm saying hi to everyone from Mönchengladbach, which is in the western part of Germany, right next to the Dutch border. I'm telling you a little bit about our experiences in doing electronic fairs in Germany. So my presentation, I hope everything is seen by everybody. So if it's not working, just give me a short hint. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experiences with electronics fair, or E-Tarif, how we call them in Germany. As it was introduced by the colleagues from Fairtek, there are certain experiences that has been gained in Germany from digitalization of fair schemes in public transport. And in the next 15 minutes, I will give you some insights into these three topics. So I would like to answer the question, why do we need digital pricing in fairs? How we are able to manage customer pains and hopefully gains, especially related to the classical fair schemes that we have here in Germany, and the problems that come with it. I guess there are a lot of similarities with the situation in North America and Canada. So I'm going to talk a little bit of the experiences we did so far, and then in the final chapter, I'm going to give a little insight in what I think is possible in the future. So we will look a little bit into the next years, what comes with digital fair systems, digital pricing schemes. So to kick off, I would like to take you into the world of today, where we have a situation that we see on the one hand, the different customer needs. Our clients here in Germany might have the same experience as you do. During the Corona crisis, demand in public transport is going down, down, down. We have a large decline. We have the mobility patterns of the customers changing. We have people working much more from home, people transferring to individual forms of transport, all these huge challenges that the industry is facing. And above all, that needs to the fact that the barriers of entry that are pretty high in public transport, they haven't been lowered, but are still rising. Customer expectations are going up. So we need to find a solution. If you take a look at what customers want, you might already have seen it with your experiences. Customers want to be more flexible. They need an easy solution. They would like dynamic pricing because their mobility and usage patterns are changing. They are not traveling every day. They have different aims that they want to achieve with public transport. So it's going to need to be much more individual. People would like have a fair pricing scheme that is adjusted to their needs, not flat fares, and it must be cheap. So it's a huge and very difficult way of optimizing all these customer needs in a fair system. And in reality, especially if we have a look at how most of the transport association and the fare schemes are set up in Germany, we have high complexity with zonal fares, with different zones and different areas where the prices are differentiated by distance. We have a system that is highly complex with gates in some other cases. We have a sales infrastructure where you actually have to pay with coins, where the payment is not digitized. So the reality is quite difficult for customers. So what is the solution? From our point of view, electronic fares or e-fares are a perfect solution to tackle this customer needs and this reality where the obstacles are quite high. What is an e-fare from our point of view? An e-fare, and in the way we see it, is an automated fare calculation that is only possible because you use a check-in, check-out system based on a smartphone. So no infrastructure needed at the gates, no infrastructure needed in the cars, in the trains, and the pricing is based on different parameters. The basis for the fare calculation is done by distance. In most of the cases that we have experienced, Beeline is a favorite solution because it's quite easy to handle. It's very fair, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about this fact in a while. Usually you use a base fare per trip or per day, and you can use price caps, maybe per day or per month. So that's the basis of how e-fares are set up. And if we talk about e-fares from our point of view, it's a pay-per-use solution that combines three major pillars. On the one hand side, we have the check-in, be-out, or the check-in, check-out system that is the base, which is able to deliver a much more comfortable solution for customers when it comes to easy access, so you can decrease barriers to entry. You can gain customer information by every single trip. You can have an insight into the usage data and the patterns of the people. How often are they using, where are they going, and etc. etc. At the base, we have after that the e-fare pricing scheme, which if you do a distance-based pricing scheme, it's a perfect solution to optimize price-performance ratio and overcome barriers. So that's the main advantage of a e-fare combined with check-in, be-out compared to a classical solution with zonal fares or general flat fares, etc. So that's the two major pillars. And the third very important pillar is if you talk about electronic fares, you combine the smart ticketing, check-in, be-out, the electronic pricing done by distance based fares, and you combine it with different types of incentives that only can work if you have digitalized pricing and digitalized ticketing, which is much more attractive to achieve customer retention. In addition to what you do with the classical monthly passes, you can do this even combined with demand management. You can use different types of dynamic pricing, or you can use yield management. I'm going to go into some more details on that later. And you can use different kind of pricing mechanisms to reach new customers and acquire new users to the system. So in the end, what's the big advantage? It helps if it comes to customer acquisition. So people who are kept out of the public transport system just because of the complexity of the classical pricing, of the way you have to obtain your tickets via vending machines, etc., was just too complex. And you can use the different incentive schemes to increase the frequency of existing clients. And the question is, how does it work in reality? Eduard will tell you some more details later on about the case of North Rhine-Westphalia. I'm going to show you some examples of existing solutions of digital fares that we have here in Germany. On the right-hand side, you can see a map of Germany with the different examples, at least a dozen digital fares operating at the moment. Some are still pilots, some are already introduced as a regular product. So that shows that the acceptance by customers is high. It shows that the potential of these new products is quite high. On the left-hand side here, you can see some examples of these different e-fares. One is set up in the area of Cologne, one is set up in the area of the Verkehrswende Rhein-Ruhr, which is the biggest transport association in Europe, combining more than 7 million people. And you can see that the marketing is done a lot with focus on Luftlinie, which is the German equivalent to B-line. So that is very much focused on this really easy, really fair, and in some cases quite cheap pricing scheme, which is much more advantageous compared to the classical zonal fares, where sometimes the price is increasing by 30 or 40% just if you cross the border of one zone. So the focus is here a lot on fairness, on the smartness of the pricing. And in some cases, it's already combined with incentives in the area of Munich. So that's the south here, the MVV. We have a bonus system set up that comes with a digital fare. So if you do a certain amount of rides in a month, the next rides will be discounted, and the discount is going up the more rides you do in a month. And we have, in addition to that, in the Munich region, established a price cap, so there's a price cap per day that is solely based on the distance of your trip. So if you don't do a trip that is longer than 20 kilometers, you have a price cap of €7.90. So that's all the trips usually done in a city. And if you go over 20 kilometers, another price cap per day is set. So that's the kind of smartness that is implemented here. You totally ignore the old system of zones and pricing based on different locations. It's totally based on the digital recognition of the B-line between start and stop. Why is it so important that we base it on this kind of pricing scheme? From our point of view, electronic fares are just one, but a very important element of a solution that we call public transport pricing 4.0. So if we talk about mobility 4.0, we need a new pricing scheme as well. So the digital pricing with eFares is just one single piece, and the two other pieces that come with it that make really these kind of pricing streams so attractive are yield management and much more detailed customer relationship management. So if we talk about digital pricing, we have the eFare pillar or piece, and then we have yield management. So the possibility with these pricing schemes, if it's totally digitalized, to do pricing based on capacity or demand, to differentiate this by time of day or weekday. So maybe a base price could be higher on Monday morning compared to Sunday evening. And you could even differentiate between certain areas where maybe the pricing is higher than in others. And you can combine the pricing with certain marketing and sales activities. So if we have a special occasion, you can offer discounts for certain areas, and you can all implement it with this digital pricing scheme where you can choose a location where if you start there, the pricing is lower, maybe because it's sponsored by a certain marketing activity. And yeah, I'm not going to tell you a lot about customer relationship management. You might know where the advantages lie here. If you have individualized data and you can price on a digital basis, you have a lot of opportunities to deliver individual discounts per customer. Either you do it ex ante, so certain target group might have different base prices, or you do it ex post. That means you price on usage. If you use more, your prices go down and down. And that's the real advantage in theory. What do we see in practice? We see that in Germany, digital fares are able to meet the customer expectations. They create a lot of gains with check-in, check-out. It's really easy to use. You don't need to know the complexity of the fare system before. You just check in and you go. With this distance-based fares based on B-line, there are no zones, and price-performance ratio is always right. There are no price surges that occur if you just cross the border of a zone and prices double, just only you travel one step further. You can use bonuses or discounts based on user frequency with a real very smart incentive for increasing usage. You are able to do action or location-based pricing, which is always a huge opportunity to integrate third-party sponsors or financial support or stakeholders into the pricing. So where certain areas can be reduced and financed maybe by the public authorities. So there are different solutions that are possible, and in the end, contactless digital ticketing and payment is a smart way of regaining customers after the COVID lockdown. So what we see here in Germany, we see B-line is perceived very positively. People think it's fair and cheap. We see that the customers really like the advantage of check-in, be out, not trying to understand the complexity of the fare system any longer. We see that price caps are really important to create trust and security, so the people feel that the system is treating them fairly. But we see if we have digital fares in place in combination with the traditional fares, that people accept sometimes higher prices because the system is so easy to use and it's so comfortable. So that's the reason why e-fares can generate additional trips, and that's the reason why we see that the customer satisfaction with e-fares is quite high in all the areas where we have set them up so far. So what is possible in the future? I'm not going to tell you too much about all the different parameters basically possible in the e-fares. We have talked about price calculation, the base fare, the price curve, but important in the future, I've said something about price caps and incentives so far. But what we see in the future is the huge potential of using electronic fares as a basis for more price differentiation. You actually can start to do peak and off-peak pricing on a very dynamic basis and on a very fair basis. If you want to leverage supply and demand, you can start with leveraging prices by means of transport, so that an express train has a higher price per kilometer than another train, etc. And one final slide, what we can do afterwards as a solution, even to offer a solution for people using monthly passes. We could do a kind of home zone approach where customers can choose a home zone, so an area where they would like to travel. They pay a price cap for this area, and they use check-in, check-out. And all the trips done within this area are included in this monthly price cap. And if they travel outside, it's just based on the e-fare in addition to that. So that's a very easy solution to create a product even for the heavy users based on e-fares, and with the idea of flat fares and dynamic and electronic fares combined. So to sum up, what are our lessons learned? First lesson, quite easy, just do it. Choose one important customer pain point and create a new product based on it. Start with the pilot to get some insights. Not try to solve all problems that you see in your pricing at the moment. Just focus on one target group, do an easy product for a limited group of customers and learn how they react to it. be strict, think that there is still a classical fare system existing, so you have to differentiate, but you should think about migration, so build in strategies for both worlds, the e-fare and the classical fares. You should manage the risk. People are switching from one system to the other just to optimize the pricing that is existing. You have to manage that. You should monitor the economic effect as a reason for managing these risks. And last but not least, be quick. Use the fast track to do a pilot. The technology is there. The winner opportunity is here. And as mobility markets are changing, people expect new digital products, and e-fares are one important solution for it. So thank you very much for your time. I think we're going to switch to questions afterwards. So I will hand over to Eduard to give you some more details about the things that are done in North Rhine-Westphalia.
Yes, thanks a lot, Hendrik, for the great insights. I'm interested to see what Annalise has to say about her perspective in North America and how e-fares, or whether e-fares could also be a success in North America. So Edward, the floor is yours.
So, thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Eduard Rollman. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes,
right?
we can.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you also for the introduction. I'm the head of the competence center marketing in the area of North Rhine-Westphalia. I show you on the map where it is in Germany, but I'm also a project manager at the moment of one of our maybe most challenging tariff projects within the last years, maybe even decades. And we are on the pretty close to the goal line. Tomorrow is the big decision day. So we're going to start in December. We want to start after now almost 2 years work. Then a lot of partners and also Fairtek, you are going to support the distribution system and provide it. So we are really looking forward to start with this project. So before I start to get into details, I'm going to show
Edward,
you.
just a second. Do you want to
Yeah.
put your slides in presentation mode?
Okay.
Great.
Okay, perfect. So characteristic of North Rhine-Westphalia, just so that you have just a little overview where it is. It's in the western part. It's our biggest or most populated state in Germany, almost about 18 million. So also the public transport, but not only the public transport, the transportation systems, even individual driving cars, everything. It's very complex and it's very challenging because it's a very dense area. We have about 2.2 billion passengers and almost 3 billion annual revenues. That was the normal situation before the pandemic. So just to give you a little feeling about how much it affected the public transport revenues, were about 700 millions of losses that we had to challenge in this year. And this is pretty much about the same that we also had of our reduction in the last year. So what we need is, of course, new customer-oriented measures and projects. And this is what I'm going to tell you a little bit about and give you a brief introduction also in the project of e-tariffs. What you've seen is this is the area and the structure of our public transport associations that you've seen on the slide before, the red part. It's divided into 4 tariff areas, so-called transport associations. So we have different tariffs, zone tariffs, also distance-related tariffs. It's not uniform. So Hendrik talked a lot about complexity of the system, getting entrance to the system. It's especially for customers who are not using monthly tickets, who are just occasionally using the transport. It's really difficult. And so we try to give an answer with this project, with the e-tariffs. So most important goal and the key issue in the whole project was to get all these areas together. So we had 2 pilots running in 2 areas. The biggest areas, the green ones, the Verkehrsverbund Rhein-Ruhr, VRR, and the VRS. So, and in 2 areas, the big blue one and the other one, AVV, are the areas where we had no pilots. So this is where we started, and we tried to get all the developments in these areas together. So it was not about getting most value from the market, getting the most out of the customers. It was much more to provide an easy system. And this was the main goal, also a political goal from our transport ministry in North Rhine-Westphalia, which is also financing us as an organization that is responsible for the trans-regional rights. So yeah, this is actually, Hendrik talked about it already, about the check-in, check-out process. So this is pretty straightforward, and it's not really different from what you see in other projects that are dealing with e-tariffs. So you check in and check out on a smartphone base. You get an invoice after your ride or after a 24-hour period. And the most important thing, you don't have to care about tariffs, and especially you don't have to care about tariffs when you cross a border between transport associations, because this is where the difficulty starts for many customers, and where they, in some cases, decide whether to use a car or to in a different way of traveling. So this is the main goal, getting a uniform tariff principle. And there are also many ways to do it. You can go with a distance, like in the same kilometer-based, distance-based tariff that is actually transferring the way your rails or the bus is going, so, and not the beeline that Hendrik called the beeline, the straight beeline. So this is something that we all had in common as a uniform tariff structure. So this is it. It looks and it also seems to be pretty straightforward, but it's a very difficult process to get everybody together, all the independent deciding transport associations, to do it one way. This is the first time in 40 years of history of transport associations that we have the situation creating one tariff for the customers. And the fair calculation, it's just a base price per journey that is in addition to an additional price per kilometer, which is multiplied by the linear distance, or you can call the distance of the beeline. So this is the fair calculation within a transport association area. And if you cross the borders, then you have the interconnection, which you see here. If the black line is the border between 2 transport associations, you have the same principle with the base price and an additional price times kilometers of the green transport association plus the one on the blue line. So I don't want to bother you too much with details. I just wanted to give you a little brief view about how it's calculated, and also in straightforward example where we have in one area within a tariff zone. So you have 150 of a euro of a base price plus 20 cent it says labor price or additional price. I don't know the perfect word from, if you translate it from our usage of transport, public transport expressions, yeah, and you multiply it times 64 kilometers and get a price of 14.30. So this is pretty easy to calculate, and you also have a calculation if you travel across tariff zones. I don't want to go through it every line, so you can look it up later how it's calculated. It's pretty easy. It's just what we've done, and what is definitely very necessary if you introduce such a system. You definitely need a cap, a pricing cap. So you need to get trust from your customers, and which is looking here pretty easy. These are the overview of the prices that we have within all the transport association areas. They are within the range, so they don't differ too much, but the most important is that the structure is the same. So every customer does know that it's a base price and an additional price, and it's everywhere the same. It's just differs just a little. For if you see the history of the tariff development, so you will find it very, very uniform if you compare it to the situation we had before the tariffs. So what you need, or better said, what looks very easy, maybe on the slide, it's of course it's more difficult if you take a look on the background of our, or if you go deeper in the tariffs. So it starts where you have, for single journeys, you have a price cap which differs from one room transport association to another. You have also within an area or within cities a special pricing cap, and you have a pricing cap that also refers to each room of the whole area of this transport association, and one global, which is 30 euro, which refers to the whole North Rhine-Westphalia area. So these are just a few differences that we have, but what we also try to make easy is the additional booking of, for example, a traveler, an adult person who travels with you without being registered in this in your account, and which is like 100%, which means double the price of what the registered person pays, and also 50% discount if a child is traveling with you. So, okay, this is all about the e-tariffs of North Rhine-Westphalia, which didn't start yet. So we are just we're on the finish line, so it's not long to go. But on the other side, I cannot give you too much customer feedback. But if we go into details and discussion later, of course, we have a little bit experience Hendrik does with the projects that already started with, that were pilot projects. So, and if I come back to the problem of the really high revenue losses, we're not gonna, from the start, we're not gonna have a really big impact. This is what I suggest, honestly, with the e-tariffs. This is something that has to start and goes for years, at least the first months, until you really have a bigger impact and customers gaining trust and getting into your new system. Because changing traveling behavior is really, it's a difficult and a long-term process, which doesn't start from, doesn't happen like this. So, and especially we have what is changed due to pandemic is, of course, we have many people who are using cars, much more cars, but we also have like 26% more bike usage. Many people are shopping from digital online. So also very, very a lot of shopping tourists, which is also important for public transport is not happening anymore. So all these behavior changes we cannot really tackle with e-tariffs. So we have flexible ticket offers, and some of them were already implemented. This project in the biggest transport association area VAR is not implemented yet. It's going to start in the 1st of January in 2022. Pretty easy, actually. It's also a combination with a base price. The price is not fixed yet, as far as I know, because I'm not responsible for this transport association. So I just tried to get some of the projects together, and one of them is to have a base price and also a flexibility or a discount, which differs in two models, 25% and 35%, depend on single tickets in all price levels. And it's also a way to get people using more the digital channel. It's valid for 30 days and can be canceled monthly, like a Netflix account or anything, or even, just to get more flexibility in our system, which the customer may be used from different projects, but not from the old-fashioned public transport that I have to admit we have in some cases. Also, a project that is running is one of our municipal company here in Düsseldorf. It's the Rheinbahn. It's addressed to corporate customers. We call it job ticket because, job ticket people who need a ticket to go to their working place. So what they've done is to try to experiment with a 20 euro basic account and getting reduced price for 12 24-hour tickets. So it's also a way to address people who are working maybe only 2 or 3 times a week in an office and the other time are working from home. And also the advantage of this ticket or this model is that you can pay it either by the employee himself or in the form of subsidy, and you can talk to your company. And so both ways already were implemented. And from this project, I have just a few numbers. It started in June, and from the first months, they told me that they have about 60%, 62% of new customers. And the rest, the 38% were coming from already existing products. Like I said, job ticket. Maybe you find a better expression for job ticket in a discussion later, because I would also be interested in that. Okay, one of the last ticket offers that we are using, it's also pretty easy, 10-day flex ticket, 10 freely selectable 24-hour tickets in a month. What's the characteristic of it? It's a discount of 30% under a monthly ticket in subscription and 12% under 10 individual purchased 24-hour tickets. So this is just about to get a feeling how the price is differing. And also, this is important, the flexibility of the option to cancel monthly passes in the first year of the contract with no additional costs. Because usually before the pandemic, if you have a ticket, a monthly ticket in subscription, and you cancel it during the first year, then you have to pay additional costs. So what we've done is definitely to keep, because every company or every transport association you talk to says that the monthly ticket users are the most valuable customers. They are the most constant and who are trusting you and staying with you. This is something we also experienced during the losses of revenue within the last 2 years. So we want to try to keep the system attractive for them. And so what we've done is definitely the price constancy for the next year. It doesn't apply to single tickets or daily tickets, but definitely to monthly tickets in addition. But we also have done some thank you campaigns during the summer vacations in both years. So if you have a ticket from one transport association, that you can use it in the whole North Rhine-Westphalian area. And also this was something that was subsidized by the Transport Ministry of Transport in North Rhine-Westphalia, but we also had a campaign which was sponsored and introduced and initiated by the VDV. It's the Verband Deutscher Verkehrsunternehmen, Association of German Transport Companies. And this was, yeah, even a bigger advantage for the customers. If you had a monthly ticket, then you could travel within 2 weeks. I think it was a period of about 2 weeks in the whole Germany. So this is about it from the practical, some practical actions that we tried to implement to say thank you to the customers, but also to get some back or get some new customer. Thank you very much. I hope I'm in time.
You are. Thanks, Edward. Thanks for the great insights into the solutions that you guys are implementing in North Rhine-Westphalia. Now I am very interested to hear Annalise's point of view. Annalise, Edward mentioned those 700 million loss during COVID last year. I'm guessing the situation is very similar in North America. Can you tell us a little bit about what the situation is like and whether agencies are looking at fair innovation as well to attract and regain customers? I'm hoping Annalise is still in the call. Annalise, if you're here.
Sarah, it doesn't look like Annalise is there.
Am I back?
Oh, you are.
Okay.
Where did you go?
My computer, of course, crashed in the midst of this, so that's classic.
I don't know if you heard me. Oh, wait, I think you're muted now.
Are we good?
Yes,
oh my goodness,
we can hear you.
the difficulties. Hi to everybody, and in particular, I see some names of folks who I've worked with before, so hi to friendly faces as well. I'm mindful of the time, and so knowing that probably we want to spend some time on folks' questions as well, so I'll be brief, and then maybe I'll add in some of my thoughts as we answer questions. In general, I mean, I think, thanks to my colleagues in Germany, in terms of reflections on the differences between North America and Europe, I'd say there are always more similarities than there are differences around the world when it comes to transit in general, but fair policy, I'd say the same challenges exist everywhere and the same opportunities as well. I have a couple of general comments and then maybe a few that I'll outline. The main, in terms of my reaction to Edward's and Hendrik's points and the great experience that the changes that they're driving forward in Germany, the ability to manage interagency pricing And Edward's point about ensuring a common structure, fare structure is in place that is easy to understand, regardless if the price that's applied to that structure changes across transit operators, I think was spot on. And we see for sure across different integrated transit systems, apparent complexity makes customers nervous. And so making things easy to understand and applying similar principles to how pricing is set is really important. So totally support that. Making it easy for people to try transit, whether they're returning post-COVID or they're new transit riders, really important. And so tools, whether they're an app and different kind of payment means, is one of those ways to make it easy that people don't have to kind of both the complexity, but also what's in their hands. Don't have to buy a separate product or something. I think it is super interesting and definitely part of the what's going on here in North America. And finally, Hendrik's point about his conclusion, just get going and pilot stuff. Yes, just do, because you have to get things out into people's hands and try. Stepping back from what they said, in terms of my general comments, I really fundamentally believe, technology is no longer the limiting factor here. And although there's great tools that have been developed, those are no longer the stumbling blocks. The tools are there. There's different innovative ways to use them, and there's certainly more elegant ones than others. But really, the technology is there, unlike 10 years ago, where really that was a fundamental thing to deal with from a policy perspective. The only note I would add to that is the large centers that did invest in these big complex systems that were required, 10, 15 years ago, they have a challenge on how to transition and how to migrate. And so that's non-negligible, that challenge. But smaller, like small and mid-sized transit systems, whether they're standalone or integrated with our transit operators, have an ability to leapfrog. And so that's where I think we'll see, and we are seeing, the greatest, ability to innovate and to try new things with respect to fare policy and fare tools. I had hoped, and my colleagues who have been working with in the past couple of years, have known that I really believe COVID's an opportunity. And unfortunately, I had hoped we would see more change in the past year, let's say, in terms of the ability to kind of use this crisis to make positive change on behalf of customers, both customers who have the ability to pay for high fares, but also to address the affordability and equity issues that we're seeing that have been highlighted from, by the pandemic. And so, it's both highlighted the problem, but it's also an opportunity, because unfortunately, with transit fare box revenue being so low, and in particular last year when it was at its real lowest, those are times of change, because you're probably not going to get any worse. So if you're going to make a change and potentially impact revenue, that would have been the time. I think there's still an appetite for that, and we see that both in Canada and in the US. Probably more so in Canada, in fact, because there's a larger dependence on the fare box to account for the operating budget of the transit operators. But unfortunately, I've yet to see as many declarative, political statements about the great changes they're going to make than I had hoped. I think really, what we have seen, and this is partly due to COVID, but partly just because of growth and population growth, the need to coordinate between jurisdictions is ever more important. And so the ability to set, as the example that Hendrik just showed, to set a fair concept, a fair policy, and a fair structure that works when you have multiple operators is super important. I can't underemphasize the importance of clarifying the governance, and I won't get into that, but clarifying how decisions are made in terms of fare policy is a critical success factor to ensuring that, one, you can address kind of the immediate challenges, say returning ridership growth, but also being able to adapt to whatever changes are yet to come, because obviously the world is going to keep changing faster and faster. I wanted to quickly emphasize two different points, and then maybe Sarah, I'll hand it back to you and you can do the questions. So one is, there was a question in the chat about how do we ensure that no one is left out? And I think it's insanely important to emphasize two important points. One, I'm doing a lot of work right now. The majority of my time is supporting the state of California with respect to how the financial and digital inclusion factors related to electronic fare payment, and in this context, rolling out contactless payments across California. And as a quick stat, up to 1/4 of racialized communities, racialized people in California are unbanked or underbanked. These are non-negligible problems, and they have to be addressed. And so I think this issue of there are cool apps and there's amazing, products that can be done. They're often designed for people who are already included and are already, have options. So I think just really reminding ourselves that it's our duty to, as a public service, these are public services that we address all customers, not equally and the same, but we ensure that they're all addressed from an equity perspective is incredibly important. The flip side of that is it doesn't need to be one size fits all. And so I think, just like in legacy systems, we had cash and tickets coexisting always. I think we should kind of allow ourselves to let go of picking the technologies for different groups and more so think about fare policy, which comes in, whether it's fare by distance or so on, that address everyone's needs, and then layering on discounts and or subsidies for folks who need them. And so for those who really have the most need to be helped into this incredibly important system. The other point I wanted to make, which is kind of unrelated specifically, but speaks to the caps and the structure that Hendrik and Eduard pointed out. I think we are seeing, because of COVID specifically, a real relook in terms of the kind of addiction that transit operators in North America had to passes. Anywhere from 50 to 90% of monthly and yearly pass sales disappeared through the first year of the COVID pandemic. And so this kind of dependable revenue stream that the agencies had gotten used to, and by the way, city councils and so on, it's not, it's just the way that it had been going. All of a sudden those disappeared. And so I think, the impact of that is, one, there's a realization that the world has changed, and folks who could afford those monthly and yearly passes in the past all of a sudden may not need them as much anymore. And we see that in Montreal and Vancouver and in the US, people who now are slowly returning to the office, but are very much pay-as-you-go customers now, and not 5 days a week, at always the same time of day type of transit riders. And so needing to have fare policy that assumes irregular patterns of behavior, but still rewards for frequent usage. So fare capping being the example of how to manage those two is super important. And I think, making sure that we relook at how we address the boundary issues then in terms of implementing these policies. So just like passes tended to have quite difficult intermunicipal transfers, it didn't really work for people who were using multiple transit operators. In implementing other fare products such as capping, those same principles need to be applied, which is make sure it works for people who are crossing across different systems and potentially at different times. And maybe I'll stop there, and Sarah, we can take questions and pepper and other thoughts as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Annalise. Yeah, I'd like to give Eduard and Hendrik the opportunity to bounce off of your last 2 points. So really, like the monthly pass aspect, I'm guessing Germany has experienced exactly the same phenomenon. So lots of revenue loss because people didn't renew their passes. Do you think that e-fares may contribute to make up for that loss? And then maybe we can also go back to your last point. How do we ensure that that there is social equity and e-fares and innovative fares? That was also a question that was asked by Ryan in the chat. So Eduard, do you want to start?
Yes, why not? Thank you. Yeah, it were really good points. But the point is, what we want to do is we want to satisfy the customer needs. And if the travel behavior changed, and also doesn't depend on if people have less occasions to travel, or even have less money to buy a ticket. In both cases, what we need to do is to provide flexible tickets. As we, this is something. These were the actions that we in talking or in deciding together with more than we have more than 100 transport companies, and this was like the outcome of the discussion that we had between all these companies. So to say what we're going to do, we're going to address flexible tickets. We want to try with pilot projects how the effects are. And so at this point, we cannot say what's going to be really the impact, but we cannot also leave everything in the same old structures and just wait that the customers come back, because they won't come back. So one point that we try to address is we want to get the revenue back as much as we can. So we need to provide good quality. This is the most important aspect of all this, but we also need to give like flexible tickets. I already talked about it a lot, but we also can maybe have an impact through real campaigns, it doesn't affect to everybody, especially if you talked about people who maybe don't have like the opportunities, right? But it may affect to touch the emotional part of our system, of our product. We cannot only sell products by price. If you just start selling products by price, then you have lost from the start. So if you take an example, maybe not the best one, but Harley Davidson is not selling motorcycles, selling a dream. The motorcycle is for free. What we want to try is we can also try to get on the emotional component. And what you tried, Hendrik, is the best. You have the best example. You just implemented in Austria the climate ticket. So with a climate ticket, it's not only the name, but also it's fitting in the time that we have right now with all the debate about climate. And so the public transport is a contribution, and this is what people can do or want to do. They want to contribute in a way, and that can be also an emotional effect to use public transport. And also only one point with the e-tariffs, we tried to solve problems that we had before COVID. And the biggest problems we had is the structure of the tariffs. So we have the advantage that within a transport association, this is also already a big gain. And it's historically, it grew through 40 years that you have a transport association, you have only one ticket, and you can use every company, right? But as soon as you cross a border, and sometimes it's like 10 kilometers, and if you have a bad luck and living close to the border and your company is on the other side, even if you have a little distance to go, you still have a problem with tariffs. It differs, and it goes up in price very, very high. So just to give you a little a number of how much or how high the project I was talking about is subsidized by the government. We are getting 100 million euro for 10 years, just subsidies to get uniform structure. And if you want to have a uniform structure there, of course, then it's obvious that some prices have to get down. So especially the higher prices, and therefore we have the subsidies. So this is about it. And also one question was to distribution of revenues, right, Sarah?
Yes, but maybe we can hear from Hendrik's point of view first, and then we'll move on to the next question.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. There's one important aspect I would like to add to all the very important points Edward mentioned. If people are dropping out of the monthly passes, that's what we see everywhere in the world. I mean, Edward told the reason: if we don't have an occasion to travel, we don't need a ticket, and we don't buy a product that is not addressing our needs. We need a product where people can drop in. So if they drop out of something, they have to drop into something. And that's why we think that e-fares combined with intelligent price caps and incentive schemes are, as we call them, a parachute product for people falling out of the monthly passes. So that's really important, that we have a product that is addressing maybe people that are not traveling every day by public transport, but maybe twice a week, or making 6 trips a week. So people between the occasional customers and the high frequency customers. And this customer group is growing and growing and growing. You know the reason why. And the good thing is we have a large change in travel behavior. And people actually don't know what products they need because they don't know how their work routines are developing. So they need flexibility. And what we are doing is, if we observe the pilots, actually we can analyze customer data and then we can create products that address these patterns. And if we have them in an e-fare system, we know how they behave. They have a contract with us. And we can offer them products tailored to their needs. And that's the reason why e-fares are a very good solution if we want to tackle the losses due to people leaving the monthly or yearly passes. That's one thing. And the other thing is, if we are losing money from our regular customers and not everybody is going back, and if they come back, the amount of money they are spending on public transport is definitely going down. That's a fact, because if you work 2 days a week from home, your monthly spending on public transport will going down. So we need to address other customer groups. And there was a question from Renate in the chat: what's happening with people using e-fares? And we can see a real effect that we can use e-fares to increase public transport usage of these customers. We are still analyzing the data, but the first insight we have that at least we have a 10% increase. So 10% of the trips made haven't been there in the past. So if you want to say it's 10% increase by introducing e-fares, that's a lot. I mean, we have therefore 2 effects that we need to focus. We have to retain the customers dropping out by using e-fares as a basis for more flexible solutions, like the bonuses I mentioned in the VR pilot. We had a solution that if you were doing more than 10 trips per month with the e-fare, you had an automated discount by 20%. And if you do 20 trips, every trip afterwards was discounted by 50% automatically. Yeah? So if you have a month where you travel a lot, every additional trip gets cheaper and cheaper. And if you're in the next month you don't travel too much, the other pay-per-use solution is coming into the play. So I think dynamic pricing on the behavior of the customer is the solution to tackle these problems, not decreasing the prices of monthly passes. If you're traveling a lot, a flat fare is still the best option. Like Edward mentioned, what we did in Austria, you pay 1,000 euros a year and you can use the public transport of the entire country. It's a perfect, easy and nice solution, but not everybody is traveling so much that he wants to afford or he can afford a product costing 1,000 euros a year. So you have to find a solution for everyone.
Yeah, thank you. I really like the aspect that you guys, so both Hendrik and Edward mentioned about this seamless experience. So the customer doesn't need to know what ticket to buy or what fare to buy, but as Edward mentioned, they can also travel across associations, and that's something that wasn't possible before. I have a question to Annalise. So what are the challenges, do you think, in North America to implement something that goes in that direction? And do you think you can take the learnings from Germany, from what we heard today?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, already there are similar schemes, in different cities throughout North America who are doing some of that stuff. So, in terms of challenges, it goes back to my point about legacy systems. I think I love Hendrik's approach of you can introduce something in addition to the system you've already got and not worry about kind of doing a wholesale switch of everybody all at once. I think it's a great approach. Challenges usually become about just, not to oversimplify, but, feelings of sunk cost and how much have you invested in the legacy system and making sure that it gets as much usage as possible before you move on to the next. And I'd say there's a cultural thing here more about government than it is about geography, which is that technology is a bit confusing. And in general, it's hard to understand how investments in technology can be kind of understood by decision makers. And so there's a kind of nervousness about saying, okay, we're done with one thing and we're moving to the next. It's just not a comfortable thing, I think, for public sector organizations. So I'd say the legacy system factor is there. That said, there are lots of systems, including my former one, Presto, who are experimenting and had already implemented e-ticketing and other forms of complementary fare technology in addition and in parallel to the existing ones. The other one I'd say, so, classical e-tickets, I love the check-in, check-out, or B-in, B-out of what's happening in Germany. I think it's a very elegant solution. The third would be contactless payment, which can be part of or beside the existing legacy systems, and similarly can be set up with the same types of fare policies. So capping, simple transfer rules across jurisdictions. And in fact, what's going on with the California Integrated Travel Project is exactly that, looking at kind of common industry standard technologies and being able to apply them across the state and being able to integrate either at the time of introduction or post-introduction of the technology. So I think there are elegant ways. And again, technology is going to keep changing. So I always worry that we get hooked into the technology and forget about the policy side, because ultimately this is about ensuring that everybody, especially those who need it most, can ride transit. So yeah, I think, yes, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. I think this is the challenges are much more about decision making than they are about picking the right technology. And so the I think elegance of saying a standard, when you want to have interjurisdictional travel, pick a standard fare structure, but feel free to price it and to share the costs behind the scenes however you like, between municipalities or between regions, makes a lot of sense. So I think some degree of commonality and common decision making has to be done, but there can be flexibility in terms of how it gets applied and how it changes over time. To Hendrik's point just now, adapting to different consumer behaviors and trying to change consumer behavior to incentivize more transit and more regular and more trying of transit, not just for those who already use it.
Yeah, completely agree. So Hendrik and Edward, if you had one key learning to give us about introducing e-fares in Germany, what would it be? And you have 1 minute each before the time is up.
You go first or I go first?
Go ahead, Hendrik.
I go ahead. Yeah. The key learning is don't be afraid of the outcomes. They're going to be much more positive than you expect. because people love if you make something easier than it has been before, and people trust the technology, and let people experience what's new, and don't try to have a solution to every question in the beginning, because if you try to find these answers, it will take you 2 years, and it's going to be 90% perfect and never 100. So start right away. You can answer 75 or 80% of the questions that arise, and that's enough of details that you need to set up a pilot, and the rest come anyway, and you will find a solution together with your customers. And people are really keen on trying these new products, and they really help you, because if you do market research, at least 40 or 50% of your customers will answer your questions because they like the product. So use the insight and the intelligence of the customers to make it better. I hope that
Thanks,
was
Hendrik. A little bit over the time, no, just kidding. Edward, go ahead for the final word.
All right, thank you very much. So I would also go a little bit in the same direction. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of the technique, of the technology. Don't be afraid of how your customers gonna react to this technology. The press and also the echo that we heard from implementing those systems were all positive. So this is something unusual for us in public transport, that because usually every time when we increase prices, so the press is to get really good press and communication campaigns is not that easy. And with this project we're not on the same level as Facebook or Google with the innovation, but we are getting into like in the way that customers see us as an innovating institution. So this is very important. And if you start such a project, I would say try to avoid island solutions. This is how we call them. If you make a solution for every company or every association, make it the project as big as you can, and it's still that you can handle it, really good project management, but it's much better to start and also to get to know your customers, because maybe it's not too offensive to say you don't know your customers, because to know them, you have to know really their real behavior. And this is something you only get, you don't know how your daily ticket customer is traveling. So this is what we need. And this is also what Hendrik said, then you can make a tailor-fit solutions. But first we need this solution, digital, and then we get to know the customer, then we can make real good communication and really detailed products. But we're still far away from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think main key takeaway, just do it. Don't be afraid. And yeah, I think that's the best way. That's also how we operate at Fairtek. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Annalise, Hendrik, and Edward for speaking today. And thank you, everyone, for participating. We'll be sharing the presentations, the recording, and the contacts of the speakers with everyone. So thank you, and feel free to get in touch if you have any more questions or if you're just wondering about us. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you again to Fairtek. Watch for an email following up. If you're registered, you will get the information as mentioned. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you
Have
very
a great
much.
day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye to North America.